Hi guys, Nada here from Tech Testers, and today I'm going to talk about the brand new case from Cooler Master, the NR400, which we have right here. So this is a micro ATX case that you can get for around 60 euros or US dollars. And there's also an ATX version, the NR600, that you can get for around 70 euros or US dollars. You can get a version like this that has an optical drive bay, or you can get a version without the optical drive bay that is going to just have a very clean front panel instead of this cutout. So this is a very cheap mid-range case, but the question is it good enough to compete with some of the popular, more established cases in the same price range? Let's check it out.
This video is brought to you by the Aorus 8027QD, Gigabyte's very first gaming monitor that earned my top recommendation if you're looking for a fast, solid performing 27-inch Quad HD monitor for gaming and creative tasks. Get yours using the link in the description below. On the outside, the new NR cases look pretty basic. I think they have a bit of a traditional, old-school Cooler Master feel to them with a mesh front. That mesh does mean these cases are essentially wind tunnels, so generally cooling should not be a problem. Also, it means you can add LED fans to the front for some RGB effects. The overall design isn't particularly inspired. We've seen the half-glass design a couple of times now, but the finish is actually alright, and I know that a lot of you will appreciate this simple design. I do think that they should consider making a closed option as well, as very few manufacturers still offer non-windowed cases, and I think a closed NR400 would suit office use very well. Both the NR400 and the NR600 can be purchased with or without the optical disc drive cutout. Our NR400 that we use for most of this video has the optical disc drive option, and the NR600 does not, but they are basically identical, so most of this review you can apply to both, space differences aside. I personally don't really see the point in the old school optical drives anymore. Even the USB optical drive I kept for emergencies hasn't been touched since I bought it. I also think the non-cut front is a lot prettier, but I guess if you really want one, you have the option. The top has a magnetic dust filter, which you can remove if you put a radiator in the top. The bottom has a filter too, but that filter is really basic and actually one of the few signs that this is a budget case. A nice slide-in or a magnetic filter would have been nicer. Overall, outside build quality is decent. Now, don't expect miracles, but considering the price, it holds up well. Interior is kept clean with a PSU shroud, which is pretty much standard these days. That shroud also fits two SSDs, we get some grommets on the side of the motherboard, and you get two fans as well. All good things considering it's a pretty cheap case. Now let's take a quick peek at the back of the case, which is also pretty standard. It doesn't have much in the way of special cable routing, but there is plenty of space, making cable management easy in typical gaming systems. There we find another two SSD spots plus a movable HDD cage fitting three 3.5-inch drives, with the third being on top of it. Keep in mind that if you have the ODD version, you can even hang a fourth 3.5-inch drive under the optical bay, so there is no lack of storage options.
Overall, there is plenty of space for any system you have in mind, considering this is a small format case. It can fit a CPU cooler up to 166 millimeters in height and a GPU up to 346 millimeters in length, a bit less if you're going to use an all-in-one mounted in the front. When it comes to fan support, it actually fits a lot of fans everywhere. I'm not going to go over all of them. You can see them in the description below. I'm going to leave a little link. But I do want to say that if you buy a case without the optical drive, you're going to have an option to fit a larger radiator on the top, and you're going to be able to fit an extra 120 millimeter fan in the front. So keep that in mind when you choose between the option with the optical drive bay and one without. It is obvious that a case like this is perfect for those budget gaming systems, so I actually built one of those right here. It costs 800 euros or around $800, and it can run all the recent games on quite decent settings. So let's go over what I've put in this system. So for a CPU here, I have the Ryzen 5 2600, which is the most popular gaming CPU for a reason, because you do get the best performance for the price you pay. I put that CPU in the MSI B450M Mortar motherboard because it's cheap, it looks great, and it has great VRM, so there is some room for overclocking. For the memory, we have a Corsair LPX module, 16 gigabytes of it. And for the GPU, we have MSI GTX 1660, the Gaming X. If you have a bit more budget, I would go for the TI, 1660 Ti, but if you don't, this one is going to be completely fine if you're gaming on a monitor that is 1080p. For the CPU cooler, I use the standard CPU cooler you get with the AMD Ryzen CPU. Now, for the 2600, you actually get a CPU cooler without the LED circle, but I couldn't find that one, so yeah, this is what I got. Now, this cooler is quite okay, even if you want to overclock a bit, so you can overclock somewhere to 2600X level. But if you want to go over that, I would suggest getting something with a bit more cooling power and replacing this stock cooler. When it comes to the power supply, I use the Cooler Master MWE450. Now, 450 watts is going to be plenty, even if you're overclocked, because this whole system as it is now was pulling around 200 to 220 watts. When it comes to the storage, I would use something like a Crucial MX500 or a Samsung 860 EVO because they are cheap and fast. And I know that you probably noticed that I have the Samsung 960 EVO here, but that is only because all the software I use for testing is actually on this SSD already, so it was just convenient. So this is the system I would suggest for around 800 euros that is going to run you all the recent games on decent settings. But let's test the case and see how it performs with this current system in it.
While gaming, our GPU was running at 66 Celsius, our CPU was sitting around 57 Celsius, and we measured 36.7 decibels at 50 centimeters distance. Those are very good temperatures at near silent operation. Of course, we did pick some fairly quiet components, but don't expect this design to dampen the sound much if you pick loud components. In Blender, we measured 73 Celsius on the CPU, 46 on the GPU this time, at 37.1 decibels at 50 centimeters distance. Comfortable temperatures and very quiet. Keep in mind this is with the CPU fan set to a quiet profile, so you can save a few degrees if you increase the fan speed. You could argue that the CPU is a bit warm, but don't forget we're using a stock cooler here. If you're serious about overclocking, I would suggest adding a third-party cooler. Something like a Cooler Master 212 Black Edition isn't expensive, lets you push a Ryzen 5 quite far, and would match the aesthetic and the price range of the NR400. Either way, however, these are actually some great results. And even if you try to squeeze in a 1660 Ti or a 2060, it really won't have any problems.
One thing I want to point out in my build right now is that even though the power supply is quite cheap and it's a very decent power supply for that money, I do have to say that personally I'm quite allergic to those mustard colored cables. So for myself personally, I would probably get either a bit more expensive power supply that has black cables or get some extensions just to cover that and make it look a bit nicer. Now overall, the NR400 and the NR600 are not gonna make heads turn, but they're quite decent. They have a very clean look, they're very easy to work with, they can handle normal systems very easily and in silence, and they are cheap. And there is not much more you can ask from a case in this price range. Now I do think that the NR600 is in a bit of a tougher position because it's an ATX case that costs around 70 euros, which means it has a lot of competition. You can get an NZXT H500 for that money. You can get the Funtex P300, Funtex P400, Funtex P350X. You can get a Sharkoon TG4. You can get a Fractal Meshify C. So there is so many cases to choose from, and this is, mind you, a good quality case, but just another one in a row. But the NR400 is in a much sweeter spot in my opinion. It's a great case, it's a cheap case, and there is not that many MATX cases to choose from. You can get, for example, the H400 from NZXT, but that one is much more expensive. So if you're looking for a good quality case that is affordable and compact for your budget gaming system, then the NR400 is just an easy recommendation. Now, that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments what do you think about this review and about this case. Don't forget to subscribe, give me a thumbs up, and see you in the next one. Bye.